It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday. Wow, that was all over the place. I can't believe it's already Friday. It seems like Monday just happened. It's been that kind of week. I'm going to get right to your comments because I am recording this between Leanna Care sessions on Thursday. A bunch of housekeeping with this. Patrons, if you don't normally check the Patreon messages because you just give me money and don't care, bless you. There is a lot of feedback and focus group stuff going on the Patreon right now. So you will want to look into that. Also, I have 2 people awaiting on subsidized Leanna Care sessions for the coming month. So you know what's coming. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. There are a lot of announcements about what's coming up for stuff, community stuff, and so on the Patreon. So, like I said, I'm cramming this between sessions. So let's get right to it. I thought I knew what order I was going to go on, but I want to deal with 2 asides that came up on the 2 Women Talking video. And I sometimes love tangents to sort of dominate the conversation. And the one on practical gifts brought me joy that it was such, people had such strong opinions on practical gifts versus impractical gifts. And, it's funny because I'm somebody who likes gadgets too, but there are tools you need and then gadgets you don't need, but you really, really, really want, right? But yeah, that was a cool, it was fun to read those comments. Really fun. It made me happy. The other thing that people reacted badly to the idea of superheroes don't solve government problems. And based on the Sam Wilson Captain America thing. And it's interesting that people reacted so strongly to that because that is the Superman problem. If a guy like Superman starts solving problems can look a lot like taking decisions away from regular people, right? The thing about Superman that I find interesting, and I'd love to write a Superman type character someday. They'll never let me write Superman. My opportunity to write for DC Comics came and went. But what I would do with a Superman story is deal with how to wield power responsibly. Obviously with a lot of action sequences, but that is the main question of Superman. How does he balance the awesome power he has? Because strength is not wisdom, and I do think that power sharing is, kind of the Liu Kang ending of Mortal Kombat 11 with a council that makes decisions. I mean, there's no good way to have the power to control time. I found that whole concept scary, but, power sharing is frustrating and difficult, but often very important. And it doesn't matter who the strongman is. If you get a strongman with too much control over other people, it becomes a problem. So let's get into that because I was very pleased about the response to the "Can we please stop centering shitty men" video. Now, there is one comment I wanted to read because it's a clarification on the stuff about porn and princesses. Song went and dove into the comment section and responded to a lot of people, so I'm going to let her do that. Somebody else said something about, did I separate that comment? Maybe I did. But someone suggested we hinted at something that we didn't hint at. And I want to be clear, we were not hinting at this. Do not judge our porn preferences the same or even similar as our relationship ones, platonic or romantic, which I feel was kind of hinted at. Not by me, and I don't think by Song. If you think we're hinting at something, I am not a hinter. So no, if I believe something, I'm going to come out and say it, unless in the instance of talking about graphic sex, YouTube won't let me. So no, I don't hint. If I have something to say, I'm going to say. So no hinting, rest assured. Okay, so let's get into the terrible men stuff because I isolated a ton of comments and I'm just going to blow through because also thank you for all the people who are like, Kratos, yay! Because I bought God of War Ragnarok. I have not had a chance to play it yet because adulting. I'm going to play it on the weekend, but it's a thing of that excitement and trepidation of diving back into a game franchise I am very, very, very close to. So here we go, right? Join on Twitch on Tuesday if you want to see me play it. So that part about people thinking cruel equals honest reflects how some people act like reality equals bad things and fantasy equals good things. A very destructive way of thinking. And I agree that that's a destructive way of thinking. I can't even get stories that are fantasy equals good things anymore. Like, oh my friggin' God, everything is friggin' drama. More on that in a bit. Another one. I mean, we all fail to accept society's standards. We're all certified arseholes. I want that. Certified arsehole. Yeah. So people latch onto the image of the charismatic arsehole since a charismatic, decent person is out of reach anyway. Okay. It's an exceedingly toxic coping mechanism, and we need people to take the bull by the horns and treat fallibility as inevitable, maybe even a virtue, because if you fail, at least you tried, instead of this stain which follows people into and beyond the grave. Also, the culture of assuming everyone out to get you is indeed a disaster. Similar comment. Some people can walk through a spotlessly clean city with crystalline skyscrapers and lush green parks and feel the urge to wear a sandwich board with "man is destructive" scrawled across it. It's only because the majority of people are forces for creativity that we find the destructive people so alarming. It's the squeaky wheel getting the grease. It's funny because I found, because you guys know I didn't grow up with a lot of money in kind of a rough neighborhood, and I found that the centering of people was very different in communities with less money than communities with more money. I noticed that the asshole gets centered more in upper middle class and rich circles than in lower middle class and poor circles. I don't know what that says. I just know it is so. Good video. I think you missed one part of normalizing terrible men, romance tropes. It's not just Whedon and company. Edward Cullen, Christian Grey are pretty terrible men held up as romantic ideals. You could also add in N.K. Jemisin's 100,000 Kingdoms, where we have a literal god who fucks to death any foolish mortal to consent to him until he has sex with the heroine, which makes everything okay. Sometimes I think there's a feedback loop between the genres. Romance novels idealize terrible men because the writers get the idea from other genres. That's what heroes are like, and other genres write terrible men as heroes in part because romance novels make them think that appeals to women. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who write books and get books published that have never actually had a primary relationship, and so they just borrow. And I think that's some of that, or they've never had a healthy relationship. That's a big problem with comic book writing. You've got people who don't know how to have healthy relationships trying to write Superman and Lois and Barry and Iris and, you know, Scott and Jean and Peter and Mary Jane and so on and so forth. Now, I don't comment on romance stuff because I'm not the romance expert. Song is. So just leaving that there. I stay in my lane. Another comment. Not to mention, when you center and normalize terrible men, you also center and normalize the responses to them. In other words, you normalize treating all men like they are terrible. As you say, Joss Whedon is a master of this. And yeah, there is a loop of, if all men are terribly, we treat men like they're terrible. And so terrible men get away with more because all men are terrible. But then they say, I can't help it. Everybody treats me like I'm terrible. It is a cycle. And again, I did not grow up with this because there were so many diversion programs where I grew up that it just shocked the shit out of me when I moved up like a social echelon and all of a sudden it was asshole fucking central. And that's part of the problem I have. That's why I don't fit in a lot of nerd spaces, because to me, you know, the people that are writing the columns and stuff like that, not the rank and file gamers, not the rank and file fans, but the people writing about this stuff really seem like people who create problems instead of having real problems. They're people who are able to go to college and bob around and do a bunch of work for free and freelance stuff and had social circles and had connections. They really don't have terrible much to complain about compared to a lot of people. And that makes the perception very skewed. Again, I'll leave that there because more comments. I think I've got 4 more. Yeah. Interesting theories. The video threw me back to your Feedback Friday on the 4th of February. In that video, you referenced Foucault and his theories regarding norms. I can't believe people remember my videos back then, but thank you. Bless you. Appreciate the support. We can't stop the normalization of shitty men because the penalties for not adhering to an established norm is still incredibly difficult to overcome the social inertia. Foucault, yeah. If we look at just the punitive nature of norms, we see that the enforcers of that norm are the horrible men and women. It's a means to protect the power base that they've built for themselves. Moreover, the horrible men in the making see enforcing those norms as a path to power for themselves. Power and wealth have long been regarded as a viable way to attract women. The men who don't value power don't see the value in enforcing those norms, but also don't see the value in overthrowing them, as it requires unseating powerful people who often have minions. As someone who lived under that regime, it was more efficient to keep my head down and protect myself and make connections with the people who also didn't value that regime. I think I won because I've established some lifelong friendships. For those who couldn't make those connections, survival is more important than progress. And yeah, I mean, I come at that in a different way. I'm very happy to speak truth to power. Not terribly interested in having power myself. I'll do it if I have to. It's not a goal. It's a tool. But yeah, I relate to that from the other side. Moving on. Part of the normalizing of bad behavior is the sheer amount of tribalism and doublethink that goes into it. People will praise Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, where a-hole men are the main protagonists, but swear the She-Hulk demonizes all men because Jen dated a-holes. How does a show where women interacts with a-hole men mocking all men, but shows where a-holes are the main focus of not portraying men in a negative light? And Song and I are gonna do some stuff about House of the Dragon. She asked me to watch it. I am partway through it. I am so on Team Daemon Targaryen at this point. I'll just say I think Rhaenyra and everybody else on the show are monstrous. Like, Daemon's the least awful character on that thing. And I thought the exact same thing. How does anybody claim, why was there so much outrage about She-Hulk hating men, but Game of Thrones just seems so, it works so hard. Sorry, not Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon works so hard to go treating women as bad. Okay, it just strikes me as horrendously misandrist. Allegedly, like, men just break character to be awful. And the show just assumes that isn't everyone instead of explaining why it isn't that person. And I will have more to say when I talk to Song in the coming weeks. But yeah, roar, really frustrating. Now, I will say the acting's phenomenal. The costumes are brilliant. And the jousting in that first episode, holy crap, that was fire. So good. So there is stuff to like about the show. The visual symbolism is extra amazing. But oh man, the writing. More to say later. Okay. I do think there's good male representation out there thinking about the Marvel Netflix shows. Luke Cage was generally just a guy trying to do his best and clean up Harlem. Love Luke Cage. And while Iron Fist is controversial, you can't deny that his character is generally innocent do-gooder. And I also think that's why their Bits and Defenders was a highlight. I wish Disney would greenlight a Heroes for Hire series for them because it would really bring together the best of what either of the shows had to offer. I agree that Danny Rand was better when Luke Cage was dunking on him. Okay. Final comment. One person, this is bouncing back to the porn videos, said people put too much emphasis on sex and sexuality, letting the views of hookup culture take over the dialogue, such as believing in the 3 highs, the 6s, a false belief of sex being what's the only thing natural or physiological, so on and so forth. Yeah, I agree. It was a very long comment, but I just want to highlight that. But I want to leave on a good note, and this is a comment who's from somebody who I believe is a truly good person and a good man. And only I would make that distinction. But here it is. I've seen friends stay in abusive relationships or toxic friendships and justify it for so long with the occasional nice thing they've done, treating it as some kind of bill that has to be repaid. Me too. I kept people around longer than they should have, that I almost didn't know what it was like to experience a friendship where I wasn't having someone chipping away at my self-esteem or manipulating my mind or all sorts of toxic shite until only a couple years ago. If I ever think of it, a quote from The Perks of Being a Wallflower comes to mind. We accept the love we think we deserve. And that is very true. And I'll leave it there. Good men are real. They do exist. They are out there. I know them. I want to center them. And maybe I'll work on a video for Monday about my, because some people put positive male role models in. The Luke Cage comment was one of them. A lot of people said Superman. So maybe I'll do a video where I talk about guys I think are good men. Not perfect men, but good men. And you guys can add to it. If you want to nominate somebody to put in the video, I may not know them, but leave a comment. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session. Remember, there are 2 people who need sessions subsidized. A one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend. I'm going to go play God of War Ragnarok. Kratos.